Right, everything's connected. Waller's got first blood this morning. All right, let me get the microphone down in position. There we go. Alrighty. Yeah, let's do us a show. Good morning. I gotta turn off one of these fans. That one. Yeah, got it. Sorry about that. It gets hot in here. Sometimes. There we go. There we go. I was hearing those fans kind of squealing behind. Oh, see if I got enough headphone to do this. Backdrop. Oh, there it is. That's better. Oh, it's a little better. One of those lights fell forward. That's what that. Oh, y'all see the kind of little bright spot right there where it's blown out. I'll have to adjust that. The camera can't quite handle it. Anyway, good morning, everybody. So, I ain't gonna lie, guys. I just kind of overslept this morning. Didn't really have time after I woke up to get it to get this show set up the way I normally like to. And so y'all get a generic opening this morning, and we're gonna go look at Twitter and see what's going on. I may have a thing or three prepared just in case, but it is what it is. So let's go take a look at what's going on. Got Waltham's toe right now is, hey, hello moth, go away, go find the lamp. There you go. So peaceful, jubilant, determined. Yeah, I'm sure. That do you see the faces behind this guy? He's trying to make a certain kind of point, because here's what's going on. Mike Galsworthy says, do you understand the significance of these two particular papers standing with these huge crowds and overwhelming UK public opinion? Mike, do you understand it? Because, I mean, we could see the crowd behind Homeboy right here. That crowd is a very particular kind of crowd. And that's where he is. That's what he's talking about right there. It says United Britain stands firm against thugs. The thugs they're talking about are the British, right? They're talking about the people who live there. These crowds are not the British. So, okay, and Cat Turd's talking about boycotting Dunkin' Donuts. Well, we might take a look at that in a minute. But I wanted to share this with you because we're, I was thinking about doing a whole show kind of based on this article that I'm about to show you. And this is an older article. And I'm not going to say the date just yet, but I'll go ahead and tell you ahead of time that it's an older article. But it came across my feed earlier this morning, and I haven't had time to prepare a show explicitly about the ins and outs of this particular story, but I want to bring it to your attention in light of what we've been seeing in the U.S. for years now, and globally for not quite as long, but in a different way, and now we're seeing in Britain. Xander says those are the two most populist newspapers standing against native Brits, which is the point he's making. Okay, I'm glad you're popping in with that, Alex. And it's interesting that you phrased it this way. Those are the two most populist newspapers standing against native Brits, which is the point he's making. Yes, the papers, the narrative, and the government in Great Britain is standing against the native-born British. And that the language, even the language that you used here, and this is, I understand that's part of your point, but I want to clarify, I want to make sure that everybody else watching is tracking this. The two most populist newspapers, which is to say that the newspapers that are most patronized by native Brits, right? They are popular with the people. They are like the government of the people, just completely taking a shit on their own benefactor base, on the people who fund their existence. And so I want to, kind of in that same vein, I want to clarify some stuff for you. And a lot of this has to do with the way that public opinion is affected by social media. And when I say that, I want to take you back in the Wayback Machine to early MySpace being replaced by Facebook, and the kind of boom of, let's be real, the journalist industrial complex, right? The journalism industrial complex. So a lot of what we see now, as far as the way that narratives are constructed in the news, you go back to your Walter Cronkites, and yeah, the fact is he was a big lefty, right? We have these kind of rose-colored glasses that people like to talk through in reference to, way back when, before the 24-hour news cycle. No, make no mistake. Way back when, the media has always been the propaganda arm of the far left. The media has always been controlled by the parts of the government and the elected officials in the government who seek to use it as the funded propaganda arm of the government, right? When you hear them refer to it as the fourth estate, then it really is as simple as, they're being treated as the fourth branch of government. So the idea that media bias is something new is a non-starter. But there was an interesting new development with the advent of social media, because social media it's a business. The point to a business is to make money. And the way that social media makes money, right? Follow me here. Using Facebook is free to the user, right? If you want to go look at Facebook, if you want to go look at Twitter, generally, it's free. Now, I pay the $8 a month or whatever it is to Twitter for that blue check mark, because this is a branded show, and it's a hobby, but it's a hobby that I'm taking kind of seriously. Never forget, brother says that. Okay, yeah, I'm going to come back to you on that. Brother. So it's a business, and the way that they make their money, and many of you are not hearing this for the first time. Many of you already understand this, but it's got to be a part of the conversation, a part of the explanation. If the product you are using is free, it is not the product. You are. It's a trap. It's bait, right? This show, for example, It is free to watch this show. I don't charge you any money to watch this show. I don't charge you any money to watch this show. Now, you can always go to buymeacoffee.com/the Brushfire Mind and make a generous donation to help us keep the lights on and upgrade equipment. But it doesn't cost you anything to watch the show, right? I mean, I expect you to have a cup of coffee in front of you. Coffee ain't free, and that's why we have that's why there is a way to send us a little cash to help with that. So you can click the link and send $5 to fill up the cup. And by the way, I drink cheap coffee. $5 to fill up the cup for most of a week. And that's anyway. So it was all about selling advertising. And what the influencer world, and influencer is a very interesting way. It is a very interesting word being used here by the propaganda machines, right? Your Harry Sassans, these kind of characters. They discovered, as media pros, as quote unquote journalists or urinalists, I prefer, that they could chase algorithmic interest, and the things that people would click on, right? Remember the old phrasing. If it bleeds, it leads. If it bleeds, it leads. And there's a reason for that. This is an important to understand psychologically. Psychologically, if it bleeds, it leads is a very base survival thing, right? Yes, we all get a smile when the little girl opens the big box with the holes in it on Christmas, and now you've got a cute little girl and a puppy, right? And that's a great, heartfelt, warm, beautiful, loving image. And you get a warm fuzzy. And you might even reflect on it again in a day or two. But you don't think about it. You don't wonder about it. You don't obsess over it. You don't worry, God, I wonder what happened to that little girl and her puppy. No. You smile. Hey, little girl with a puppy. Awesome. But when they tell you that hostile foreign invaders are coming for your jobs, then you get concerned because when are they close? How many of my jobs are they going to take? Dude, what's going to happen to my tax bill? How am I going to keep the lights on? Who's going to pluck my chickens? If it bleeds, it leads is there because when there's disaster on the horizon, we know instinctively and academically and emotionally, we know that remaining informed is valuable, right? Looking at what's going on in the UK right now. At the same, the UK has a massive immigration problem, and they don't have too many refugees. Get that shit out of your head right now. They don't have refugees, just like we don't have any refugees here. They have economic migrants at the most generous, right? They're some of the most radical far right commentators are referring to these people as economic migrants. They're just here for the jobs. Let's clarify some things, though. That's bullshit. They're not here for the jobs. They're here for the government check. That's a very different creature. They're not storming the border, smuggling in fentanyl so that they can go pick strawberries on a farm in California. No. They're being funded by our government to displace the native population. It really is that simple. Never Forget says cops in USA are killing citizens in record numbers, mag dumping into civilians. That's not happening in UK. No. It's being reported that way. And okay, I'm glad you got that confused, brother, because I'm going to help you out there. So let me get back a little bit. Much of your opinion on what's happening in the news is a direct result of the influencer, of the propagandist, discovering that you can manipulate the algorithm. So if people click on stories that are about black people getting hurt, and people click on stories about cops misbehaving, and people click on stories about women being abused because you want to be informed, then, oh, hey, we're going to show you stories about black women being abused by cops, and black cops abusing women, and women cops abusing blacks, and black women cops being abused by, and it just goes on and on, because it's not a question of what the story is. It's a question of how many keywords we can put in a headline, right? Turns out that in 2020, Facebook, we already know what happened with Twitter before Elon Musk bought it, and we got the Twitter files. We already know that Twitter was basically engaged in direct censorship and election interference by doing things like suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story. That is a bigger deal than most people. Many of you out there understand that the Hunter Biden laptop story is a big deal and still don't understand how big a deal it was. When you hear people say things like you don't hate the media enough, let me help you with that statement. Let me clarify that for you. It is not that they're suggesting that you're not hating it with everything you've got to hate it with. It is that the media and the current iteration of the US government, by the way, is so corrupt and evil that it is metaphysically impossible for you to dedicate a sufficiently useful amount of hate in that direction. It's not that you don't hate them enough because you're not trying. Try all you like, you cannot do it. They all, no matter how hard you hate them, they deserve more. Waller says he misses a good mag dump. Man, I do too. I really do. It's been a hot damn minute. Quiet Skies and Tulsi Gabbard. I don't talk about Tulsi on this show very much, Waller. And I probably should. I should probably do a show where I talk about Tulsi and I talk about Bill Maher. Because I see a lot of commentary about, hey, who thinks Tulsi Gabbard needs to have a position in the Trump White House, the Trump administration? Here's the thing. Tulsi seems to have learned something. Tulsi seems to have been run off by the psychopathy of the lefties. But here's the thing. They haven't become more extreme. They've just been more successful. Their objectives haven't changed. Their policy positions haven't changed. Their maneuvers changed a bit. But it's not that they've become more radical. They've always been radical sociopaths. Right? Saul Alinsky didn't write Rules for Radicals in 2008. They haven't changed. They've just become more successful over time. Now, there's a reasonable argument to be made that around the time Biden first started running for office, the Democrat Party was replaced with the Communist Party. But when you're talking about somebody like Tulsi, she's not old enough for that to be the factor. So when you look at somebody like a Tulsi Gabbard or a Bill Maher, who's like, oh, wow, these guys are really crazy. They were always that crazy. The most generous thing I can say for you, Tulsi, Bill, is that you've matured. Somewhere in your 50s, you suddenly grew up. No. If your hair is turning white before you start to understand that it's evil to murder children in the womb, you were never not a fucking child. Your mind is not sufficiently valuable or developed to trust what appears to be a new development. So I mean, the most generous I can say of Tulsi is she looks good in a bikini, and she really put the fucking screws to Kamala. In fact, I will give credit where credit is due. Tulsi Gabbard's takedown of Kamala Harris in the primary debates in 2020 may very well be the thing that keeps Kamala out of the White House. But she's still a socialist. Don't get it twisted. Crack shot, yep. Yeah, Tulsi, that Hawaiian punch, she absolutely nailed her. And that clip is going to be recycled and repeated over and over again, and it really may be the thing that shuts Kamala down and saves us all from getting that trash in the White House. Because, make no mistake, Kamala and Tim Walz are just trash. So, all right, well, guys, okay. So, explaining the algorithm thing, and then, so the propaganda machine started really leaning into police brutality, police violence, racism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. About halfway through Obama's last term, right before Trump was elected. And in 2020 in particular, Facebook changed its quote-unquote race-blind hate speech algorithm to prioritize flagging content it deems the worst of the worst after backlash over removing black users' posts. So what happened is the algorithm and the algorithm that flagged hate speech was showing quite clearly that 90% of all of what is called hate speech was anti-white and anti-white male speech. White men are stupid. White men are trash. You're all Nazis. You're all this. You're all that. And so Facebook changed the way it flags and removes hate speech in order to prioritize, quote unquote, the worst of the worst, which is anti-black, LGBT, or Muslim. Its proactive technology will no longer automatically flag posts declaring that men are trash, Americans are dumb, etc. Right? And instead, the platform is placing more focus on automatically catching especially harmful content like posts featuring blackface, Holocaust denial, and stereotypes about Jews controlling the world. So what we learned from Facebook trying to get a handle on hate speech is that essentially everybody but white men are awful, hateful racists. And that's not what we want the public to believe. So we have to artificially alter our algorithmic processes in order to create the facade that only white men are capable of racism and hatred. Right? I mentioned this yesterday on the show when we were talking about media intervention. America has a market problem. The Democrat Party has a huge demand for overt racist abuse from white people. They demand it, but there's no supply. And so they have to fabricate the appearance of a supply. And what's really bizarre here is they seem to be having some great success with that fabrication. But understand what's happening. Like I said, they're fabricating the facade of a supply. So imagine you want you a Big Mac and you go to Mickey D's and they're just selling empty boxes. And you look around and you're surrounded by people who want them a Big Mac. And they're paying money and walking away with their empty box and smiling and saying they're happy with what they got. It's mind-numbing. It's absolutely bizarre. One might even say it's weird. Yeah, Crackshot says there's a lot of hoaxes to create the supply. Yeah, there was the Bubba Wallace thing, there was the Jesse Smollett thing, there was the Mattress Girl thing. There were two more recently that I forget the names involved in them, but you can go down the list. And there was the one about the lacrosse team that gang raped the young black girl. Turned out, nope, she's a liar. It never happened. And of course, the magazine, and I want to say that, yeah, it was Rolling Stone. And of course, the defense was, oh well, it's happening in other places, so it's important to tell the story so people are aware that it's happening. Like, if it's happening, why didn't you tell us one? If there are real stories out there, why not tell us one of those? Oh, you couldn't find any because your demand is outstripping the supply. You have a massive demand and zero supply. The same thing is true, and I said I'd address this. Never forget, brother says cops in USA are killing citizens in record numbers. That's just not happening. It's just like there's black men can't walk outside safely. Okay, that was the narrative in 2020, and we pulled up the numbers for you. There were 9 quote unquote unarmed black men shot by police officers, and of the 9, like 7 of them were actually armed with something. They didn't have a gun. Right, like 7 of the 9 unarmed black men either had something like a baseball bat or a tire iron. 3 of them were driving a car, as in the police said stop, and they drove their car at the officer trying to run him down, and the officer opened fire. Right, so the whole police brutality thing. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's. We're pretending that it happens all the time. Now, there was a case recently where I'm definitely not saying it doesn't happen. There was a case quite recently where 3 officers showed up at a house. There was a domestic disturbance called in from across the street. The officers showed up. The couple said, "We don't know what you're talking about," and so they can't. And and you're not welcome here. You can't come in the house. Come back with a warrant. And so the officers kicked down the door. It was obviously an illegal entry. And then they grabbed the woman and she said, "Hey, I didn't say you could come in my house. Where's your warrant? Don't touch me. Don't touch me." They put her in cuffs. They smashed her face into the ground. And then they accused her of being intoxicated after they smashed her face into the ground. And then the same officer threw her down a second time and a third time, and each time he threw her down, she had handcuffs on, and she was shoved face first, hard into the hardball, into the asphalt in the street, busted her head open, and then when the supervisor shows up, "Oh yeah, she's drunk." She's not drunk. You beat her in the face with a fucking street 3 times. So yeah, shit happens. It does. There are bad cops out there. And, I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to give a full-throated defense of the police when I say that it doesn't happen nearly as much as the media wants you to believe that it happens. But it happens enough that it's worth being concerned about. And this is what I'll close on. much more concerning, at least by volume and frequency of occurrence, are the number of police officers that just have no understanding of what law enforcement is, of what the law is. Hey, show me your ID. No, thank you. That legally, that's the end of the conversation. Unless you've got some reason, or I'm under arrest. No. Right? Fourth Amendment is the Fourth Amendment. But that's the thing that concerns me most, is just the sheer number of police that are clearly not qualified to do the job. And the requirement to be a law enforcement officer is dramatically lower than what it should be, because you're talking about somebody whose job it is to know and interpret and correctly enforce the law. So I have a very high expectation of police officers. And the fact remains that there are only bad cops so long as they're allowed to exist. And I find it difficult to imagine a worse cop than one who enables other bad cops. So check my math, but that means that cops are bad right now. Because as near as I can tell from the headlines, they are not actively policing one another. If there is a bad cop in your precinct, you're a bad precinct. It's that simple. You gotta if you're not policing your own, that's it. But by the way, the story that I just told about the 3 cops that illegally entered the house and then beat the shit out of this woman by smashing her in the street over and over again, the one that threw her down was fired. Not arrested, not charged, just removed from duty. The other 2, as near as I can tell from what's available in public records, were not even reprimanded. Now, for my taste, in this country, we still prosecute criminals for kidnapping and torture. And make no mistake, if you're wearing the uniform and you conduct an illegal arrest, especially if you conduct an illegal arrest and in the course of that arrest you just beat the shit out of a woman, out of a little bitty blonde woman, that is kidnapping and torture. And fuck you. That is toaster and bedsheet territory. You knock that shit off. He should not have been fired. He should have been arrested, prosecuted, and executed for his crime. And as I'm fond of saying, as you've heard me say a dozen times before, in context like these, that is not my opinion. That is the law. Black and white. So, all right, I'm gonna put a pin in it there. I've got to get in the pick 'em up truck and head to Conyers. I'll be in Conyers today. I'm going to meet Zaluska the Slav for lunch and to pick up a few more guns to hang on that wall. Specifically, the 2. He's got my M240 and my 249. He's got my 240 Bravo and my 249. So I'm going to pick up the big machine guns for the wall. And yeah, we love you, and we'll see you tomorrow.